Let's crack on, shall we? And welcome to the show, Mike Neville, former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, let's start off very quickly with your thoughts on the horrific Magdeburg Christmas market attack over in Germany. A response in Birmingham was to temporarily close their Christmas market. We're seeing sort of fortifications now around what should be, you know, these wonderful, joyful getting-togethers in the UK, sort of armed guards and barricades, and it just makes the heart cry, really, doesn't it? But what are your feelings on what's gone on in Magdeburg and where we're at in Europe in general?
It's absolutely dreadful, isn't it? So I was out in Germany in 2016 after the mass sexual assaults on women in Cologne on the New Year's Eve. And there I was the police advisor to the German police. And what struck me there is that the authorities tried to cover it up for 3 days before it all came out. And it resulted in the police president being sacked. And we see this everywhere, that there's an attempt to sort of cover up the truth. What strikes me here is that the German police have been far quicker to release details saying that the man was from Saudi and giving all sorts of information about him, which is quite at variance with how our government dealt with the Southport incident, the terrible murders there, where it took about 3 months, you know, having been told he was a sort of Cardiff choir boy who did it. So I think throughout Europe, there's real issues that we have millions of people here that we have no idea about. We don't know their motives. But we know there's a real problem with Islamic terrorism, and people are very frightened. And when people can't go out to something as simple as a Christmas market or a celebration on New Year's Eve, which the Cologne incident was, it's absolutely terrible for our society that our politicians have let us down so badly.
Mike, I'm glad you brought up the Cologne incident. I wasn't expecting to go down this route today, but I want you to remind the audience of what happened then, because I'm very aware of what happened. It harrows me to this day, but essentially it was around sort of, it was over 1,000 sexual assaults, even a few rapes. It was 1,250, I can't remember, but you will know, that took place, coordinated in Cologne Square, and pretty much all of the perpetrators were men from the northeast, North Africa and the Middle East. Tell us what happened on that horrific night.
So there was hundreds, if not, as you say, 1,000 sex attacks where women were molested, indecently assaulted, even raped by mass gangs who seemed to be coordinated, who were all allegedly Syrian refugees. People really don't know where they were from. And it all occurred around the Cathedral Platz, the main square near the railway station. And as I've said, the reaction of the authorities was to cover it up, which was an utter scandal. And of course, the women were brave enough to have recorded this on their mobile phones and the like. And this was subsequently used as evidence. That the German police haven't got much experience of dealing with images, things from CCTV and mobile phones. That's why I was sent to assist them. And many of the people were identified by British police super recognisers who went there, and some German super recognisers who we found. But it just shows the sort of conspiracy that there is to keep people silent, to stop them speaking about this. And what we end up with is the terrible incidents we see. And I think one of the questions is, why didn't the German authorities act on all this information that they've been given about this psychologist, the guy from Saudi? The trouble is, there are too many of these people and too much information for the police and the authorities, the secret services, to act upon. So they're receiving thousands of pieces of information that this man's dangerous, this man's doing this or planning that. And it's a case of, how do you find the wheat from the chaff, or the needle in the haystack? It's utterly scandalous that we have people in this country who are dangerous and we know nothing about.
Right. I mean, we've got people in this country from this country who are dangerous, but the problem is when you import a load of people, and when you look at statistics that other countries publish that we do not, related to particular crimes and immigration, you realise there is a positive correlation, that there is a trend. And yet we wait, don't we, for such statistics to be released to the public, if they're held at all. My suspicion is they probably are. And I want to sort of point now to another crime wave that's hit hitting the high street this time. 670 shoplifting offences going unsolved every day. Yes, there will be toe wags and ne'er-do-wells who go in there and nick a bottle of gin or, you know. But what I have seen more and more of is gang-related shoplifting, so connected to criminal organisations. And I don't know if you know, can tell me more about this, but my understanding is you now have criminal gangs from the Balkans and Eastern Europe who come over. They will shoplift to order, not just from, you know, your supermarkets, but also even from restaurants and raid their sort of, you know, their cellars and things. And they're taking luxury products, they're taking meats, they're taking alcoholic goods, putting them in vans and driving them back over to restaurants and businesses and, I don't know, gangster houses over in their own countries.
Absolutely. I mean, I was speaking to the head of one of the top 6 supermarkets who was saying that baby milk, for example, you'll have politicians saying people are stealing baby milk because their children are, you know, starving to death. Vietnam apparently is the destination of choice for mass amounts of stolen baby milk. Spirits, alcohol is stolen and then sold on to not just illicit clubs, but anybody who will buy it. You know, the idea it's a sort of old lady who's stealing a tin of tuna to stay, you know, stay off the hunger is simply not right. I mean, I've said this before. I dealt with a pub where it was quite a, you know, not the best pub in the world, but the menu was really quite nice. But just across the road was in London was an M&S petrol station, and so what was happening is as you ordered the nice food, the landlord would task the drug addicts in the back to go and shoplift it. You know, so what ended up on your plate 20 minutes later had just been stolen to order. So it's incredible how much of this is going on. And what's happening is that the police have allowed it to happen, and these gangs have flourished. And one of the big things, Alex, if you steal and run out of the shop, the only thing that's left, there's no fingerprints or DNA, but all this is recorded on CCTV. Yeah. The police have a national database of DNA and fingerprints. They don't have a national database of images. So if you move around like these organised gangs and you steal in Warwickshire, Staffordshire, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, if you leave your image behind, it will never be matched to the other images. So you simply, if you get caught for one, you get a £2 fine and move on your way. And the police have not dealt with this, and the result is that people now feel entitled to steal.
I wonder where security guards come into this, because just thinking where I live in London, it's in the centre of London, it's on a very busy thoroughfare, and that thoroughfare is lined with, you know, shops, all the usuals, you know, your small Sainsbury's and your Co-op and all the rest of it, your M&S. And they've all got security guards, and they've all got the sort of things that go beep, 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 you know, if you take products out without scanning your receipt. And yet it's almost guaranteed if you go in there, someone's going to be making off with, you know, armfuls of produce. And security guards just seem unable to do anything. And I kind of think, what's the point?
Yeah, well, a security guard might, deter the old lady with a tin of tuna, but they won't deter an armed group of men who are determined to steal, who will use violence, because a security guard will be told, don't offer any violence, don't get hurt, because if you get hurt, you're not insured. So these poor guys are paid. It's not really the security guards' fault or the shop employees. They've been told by their management, look, if you intervene and you get stabbed with a needle or somebody grabs hold of you and hits you with it stabs you with a knife, then you won't be insured. You're not trained for that. You just simply let them go. And this is the problem. The thieves know this, and these gangs, as you said, are very organised. They're very determined. They steal to order, and they're simply getting away with it. And we all pay, because for every item stolen, that those pennies and pounds go on to the top of the next thing that we want to buy.
Now, for my generation, I think probably the biggest Christmas film of all time was Home Alone. It was sort of defined our childhood, really, and this idea that you got this kid and the burglars are sniffing around the houses because people might have locked them up and gone on holiday for the festive period, or better still, they've got all these presents, they've got all of this stash, this swag that they might be able to get their hands on. Of course, now, in the modern era, roll that forward, and I'm pretty sure the two burglars in Home Alone would just be lifting people's Amazon parcels from their, you know, hiding places outside houses. How much does this sort of crime go up during the festive period?
It goes up enormously because there's more and more items available. People are sort of let them be left in garden sheds or in boxes, and thieves know this. But the real problem here is, Alex, is that the thieves know that the police won't do anything about it. And I've looked at, in the last 2 years, 28 of the 43 police forces in England and Wales have been inspected by Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, the people who check with police are good enough. Now, of those 28, they're checked on very many things, but one of the most important, of course, is investigating crime. They're judged on how that force investigates offences. And of those 28, only one of them was good. One. There's another category, excellent. None of them were excellent. But of 16 of that 28, they were either inadequate or needs improving. And everybody else was adequate, which is never a good, I get a good idea of my mother if I came home with a school report saying I was adequate. So that is why it's not good enough. The police are focused elsewhere, so people stealing parcels from outside houses is not important. Perhaps if they accompanied with some awful words on Facebook, then something might be done about it. But it's just... The thieves are very clever, the thieves are determined, and the police don't seem to be determined to catch criminals at all.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, it seems to me there's been this huge softening. There's almost like an expectation now that these things have become totally normalised. When I was a kid growing up, if you went in and took a pack of Chewits and Merritts, you're in big trouble. You're being smacked across the wrist, marched back to the shop. Not that I ever did this, I was a good girl. But now, just shoplifting, you just see it everywhere. It's, oh, well, there we go. Oh, someone's been stabbed. And yet we do have a situation where the police are focusing on things that, frankly, are not crimes. Again, we were talking about the societal problems underneath things like healthcare and social care earlier. And I get the impression there's also a sort of societal problem now with the sort of, it's the sort of the culture of low expectations of what we should tolerate in a society. And this whole idea of, well, a bit like Mike was saying, well, these aren't people who are taking food because the system's unjust and they need food banks. Why is it that we seem to have developed a mindset in this country that, oh, it's acceptable to steal? In fact, it's so normal, nothing's going to happen.
Well, I think there is a line that goes between people putting their feet on the chairs on trains and playing loud music even when it's obnoxious, and just not caring, just choosing to check out from basic societal standards and thinking that they can get away with it. And look, there is a culture of people in this country now, a subgroup, that feel like the normal rules don't apply, and why should they? Because time and time again, they can get away with it. It pays to be a complete and utter, prat, nasty piece of work. But there's also an effect of... In the old days, you knew who your local criminal was.
Exactly.
You knew exactly who he was. He would go down to the town centre, he'd sit around all day drinking, he'd go off and nick something, and when the police saw a little piece of CCTV, they went and saw Colin, because Colin had been thieving again, and Colin would get a night in the cells. Today, people don't know other people. We just don't know them.
And this isn't just in big cities. That was the case, and you'd always get sort of breakdown of community in big cities, more crime in big cities. Of course, I was just reading the paper this morning, and there's two guys, one from Iraq, one from Iran, who've been running people trafficking organisations out of a hand car wash in Caerphilly. And you just think, you look at the number of these Turkish barbers everywhere, 16 odd in a town like Devizes or something, and you think this is a huge part of the problem. Like you said, there used to be community, and with community comes this concept of shame and identifying people and ostracising people, whereas now it's all broken down. And I think it's another example of how mass immigration essentially is weakening our resolve, weakening integration, and all of these things, whether it's healthcare, whether it's crime, it all goes wrong. Mike Neville, thank you ever so much. Listen, what are